afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm here to talk about some of the conferences that I've been on, albeit this time with a little bit of a twist. Usually I like to talk about the conferences and mission trips and retreats that I've chaperoned, and while I vastly preferred being a chaperone to being one of the teenagers, there were a couple of conferences I was able to go to as a teenager and be able to truly feel like I could be in the moment without thinking too hard about responsibility. Now, there's one very big reason why I haven't talked about these conferences in depth, especially the last one. And that's because the final conference I was able to go on before I was old enough to be a chaperone was one of the best and worst spiritual experiences I've ever had. And I was hoping that I would kind of be able to put that behind me, but I also thought, you know what? There were also so many good moments. And not only that, but I think it might be a good opportunity to really ask my audience if perhaps the negative experiences were just a result of immature teenage drama, and that's not the norm to be expected. So I thought I would try to go in semi-chronological order, first talking about the three conferences that I went to that was at the time about an hour away, and sort of give my thoughts on the highlights of those, and then move into the Steubenville conference that I was able to go to before my mission trip. So the first three conferences were admittedly pretty overwhelming at first because this was the first big overnight thing that I had ever done, besides family vacations and all that. So I was basically sticking to my best friend like glue. Nowadays, I think I'm a little bit more willing to put myself out there and talk to new people, but not this conference. I would basically only talk to girls if I was being polite, and even then that was pushing it. And I tried very hard to not get too into the icebreakers. I think I might have mildly enjoyed them, but I was still very timid and wanted my best friend to follow me if I socialized at all. And I remember not thinking too highly of the talks at this conference. I guess maybe I got something out of them at the time, but I don't remember any of the details except that the first guy was named Chris, and that's about all I remember. But I think what I got out of it the most was how much it challenged me to really not be so tethered to the idea that I had to always have another guy with me in order to socialize. Because my best friend ended up getting sick after the first day of the conference, and then he had to go home the second day, and I was freaking out because I was like, oh gosh, this is terrifying and I don't know what I'm doing. And at the time, he was the only other guy in my group, so including the chaperones, there were only females at that conference, and I was a little bit put off, I have to admit, because I didn't grow up with a whole lot of girls in my life, so I didn't really know how to talk to them that well. I think I did better than most guys at that age and that stage of life, but it was still very scary because I was not used to a lot of teenage preferences, and a lot of the stuff that happens after puberty was kind of like oh, what do I do about that kind of thing. And so I guess you could say that without my best friend there, I really said, okay, I'm determined to enjoy this conference, and so I will try to talk to people. And I think I did. I think I did a pretty okay job, but I don't think it truly changed me. Like, that first conference was more of just oh, okay, this wasn't so bad. It was neat to be able to be around other Catholics and to be able to play cards with my best friend at night and make a whole bunch of uvula jokes about the girls when they were fangirling over a guy at the karaoke room. But it was my second conference that really started making a difference in my life. My best friend actually was feeling good this conference, and I'd like to think that it definitely helped, But I think after I heard the first keynote speaker, that definitely helped me feel a lot better in myself. I'll never forget the theme. I used to even have a t-shirt of it because I loved it so much. It was called Be Him to Others, and the two was a letter to represent like H2O. So it even had like the water molecules on the back of the shirt that had like all of those words on it. And the keynote speaker was Jesse Manibusan, who was notorious for being a comedian, a songwriter, and a youth minister that goes around the country to give talks. And he always wears smiley face shirts. He likes to joke around about food and him being overweight. But yet at the same time, he also openly admits that he goes through depression. So that was a big deal for me after I started realizing that I was depressed. And at this time, I either wasn't in depression or I didn't realize it. And I was still in that very like awkward, not really wanting to put myself out there kind of atmosphere. Like whenever the young adult chaperone next to me was like, "Come on, Paul, dance and show off your moves." I was just like, "No, are you kidding me? I don't want to look like a fool in front of all these people that I don't know." But he comes on, the keynote speaker, and he's cracking all these jokes and he's, getting people to laugh at him. He said one particular thing that made me reconsider everything that I'd told myself up to that point. And he said in almost this exact accent too. I don't know how I'm able to recall it so vividly. He said, "I'm crazy because I'm Catholic." Turn to the others and say, "I'm crazy because I'm Catholic." And I just thought, it's okay to be silly even though you're a Catholic? And I guess maybe the fact that he was an adult and therefore he had even more responsibility to not be stupid sort of made me realize, well, if he can do it, I'm pretty sure I can. And at that point, something inside me just clicked and I said, maybe it's okay for me to be silly. And I think maybe I took it too far in some instances because in my Myers-Briggs videos, some people have even suggested that maybe I'm a different personality type because nowadays I'm silly all the time. Because back then I think I was outgoing in small circles, but definitely not in big circles, and I certainly didn't like to joke around and be goofy, whereas now I do that all the time, and it was all thanks to him. That conference was also the legendary moment when we had to deal with the staircase story. And I'm sure most of you have heard it before, but just in case you haven't, it was Sunday morning and we were just about ready to go to Mass. And so, we were all dressed up in our best clothes. In my case, I was wearing a sweater. And so, of course, when you dress your Sunday best, sometimes it can be a little bit hot. So we got out of our rooms. It was stupid early in the morning, so some of us were probably still yawning. And we're waiting for the elevators to take us down to the bottom floors. But the thing is, the elevators kept being full, and we'd have to be like, "Oh, okay, we'll wait for the next elevator." So it was after 11 elevators that finally our adult leader just said, "Oh, forget this. Let's just take the stairs." And mind you, we're still hustling because we wanted to get to Mass as soon as possible. So we ran down 29 flights of stairs, and my best friend even took a video of this so that he could remember it, because I think even he realized that this was an iconic moment that we never wanted to forget. And when we got to the bottom of the stairs, the door was locked. So then we ran up 9 more flights of stairs, hoping that we could just catch a random elevator on a random hotel floor. And we finally did, after we waited for 3 more elevators, crammed onto the elevator, rushed as fast as we could without, actually running, and we were early. I think the only thing we missed was we missed a couple of hymns that they were singing, to just sort of get people in the mood to celebrate Mass. And I don't really remember too much more about that conference. It was kind of just good to get me out of my shell and get me to come across as a lot more extroverted. So much that I think I mistyped myself as an extrovert for so many years, despite learning later on that extroverted and outgoing are 2 different definitions, and you don't necessarily have to be both if you identify as one. So the third conference I went on was memorable because out of everyone in my group, I was the only one that didn't get sick. So we had, I would have to say it was probably the lamest group picture I've ever seen because I don't really want to show it because I don't like showing pictures of myself when I was younger. But my gosh, I was the only person in that picture that actually looked like I was having a good time. Everyone else was either forcing a smile, was so sick that they couldn't even muster something. Like my best friend had his eyes half open and his mouth was hanging like this. When he took the picture, there were other girls that were like leaning on the others and giving these super forced smiles, and it looked like we just wanted to hurry up and get it over with. I also really liked how near the end of the conference we all gathered into one hotel room so that we could eat dinner together because we were that one rebel group that didn't like to go out to eat like the other groups did. We just would have the adult leader order pizza and then bring it back to the hotel and we'd all just eat together. And I remember at the time just feeling this amazing, like, time slowing down moment where I was just like sitting with all these other kids my age and thinking, wow, I hope this moment never ends. And if it does, I want to remember this moment because it is just so cool to be in the presence of all of these wonderful Catholic teenagers. And that's about all I remember. I know at one point I wrote down a list of like my favorite memories from my high school years, and I'm sure at some point I might be brave enough to uh, actually read what I wrote back then. But for now, I'll just say that these initial conferences were opportunities for me to, I guess, get into the mindset that being enthusiastic about my faith wasn't the worst thing in the world. Now, as I'm recording this, I realize that I probably should have talked about the retreats that I went on as a teenager that also were a huge inspiration in me getting passionate about my faith. This t-shirt. But I want to kind of stay on topic here. Getting into the fourth and final conference that I attended as a teenager for teenagers, this was a national conference. So instead of people being local to where I lived, it was teenagers from all over the United States that came to one university. I remember being kind of amazed to be in dorm rooms. I don't know why, there was just something really fascinating about it. I love the smell of it. Something about the scent of the rooms just really stood out. I liked being able to sit on the gazebo at night and just chat with some of the other teenagers. And I really liked the idea of being at a college despite not being in college. Now, this conference was packed to the brim with teenagers that actually really took their faith seriously. At least I think that they did, because there were moments where we'd have some guys marching along the pathways and they'd be like, "We love Jesus. Yes, we do. We love Jesus. How about you?" And then at one point after they had finished giving one of the talks, there were these two guys that were sitting behind me and my best friend, and they nudged us and they had that like leaning in real close attitude that I had seen in the movies, and I'm like, oh great, they're gonna ask us what we think of the latest cute girl, and I'm like totally not interested in girls at this point, so I hope he doesn't ask me that. And instead they said, "Dudes, are you thinking about joining the priesthood?" And it just caught me so off guard because I had never considered the idea of being a priest until that conference. And I think what did it was hearing one of the keynote speakers. Now, I hardly remember anything about what the keynote speaker said because I was too busy focused on the ambiance of the main room, as well as my brother, who was, at the time kind of more of a stoic guy, but he was like crying because he got a lot of, I guess they really drew out his emotions, and I was like, putting my hand in his shoulder and making sure he was okay. And I also really loved the music. They got Bob Rice and his band to perform the worship songs. And of course, I heard better once I went to NCYC, but my gosh. At the time, I had never heard praise and worship music sound that good before. And I can still remember the theme song of that conference. I don't know why. You'd you'd think like this was so many years ago that it would just slip out of my mind, but I still remember how it goes, and I could probably sing it too if I was a little bit braver. But getting back to the priest story, I think just hearing the priests talk about what it means to be a priest and what we're truly worshiping got me to think, you know what? That must be like the coolest experience in the world to literally be able to hold Jesus in your hands. And so at the time, I legitimately thought that I was called to the priesthood. And when there was a moment when the conference leader said, if there are any teenagers who are thinking of accepting the call to the religious life, please come forward. And I was one of those teenagers. I think I might have taken it a little bit too far in my teenage immaturity, where like I was early to our group breakfast, and I remember complaining that the girls were taking too long to show up, and I was like, why are they bothering putting on makeup when they have a priest in the making here, and priests are supposed to take a vow of celibacy? Yeah, I was real sensitive back then, in case you haven't noticed. And one of the adult leaders was just like, girls just like to look good, Paul. What the heck? So yeah, I was kind of rude, and I think that probably contributed to one of the girls not liking me so much that, oh gosh. Now we get into the part that's hard about the conference to talk about. But I'm going to save that. I'm going to just talk about other things. We'll save that for last so that I can keep the optimism train going. The food was terrible. Now, I know you might be thinking, how is that optimistic? You're talking about bad food. But it was the worst food I've ever had at one of these conferences. It was so bad, in fact, that at our youth group, when one of the adult leaders was trying to get the teenagers to get excited about the conference, she was listing all of the highlights. She's like, it has great music and great atmosphere and great grounds and terrible food. And it was such a juxtaposition of positivity to negativity that I remember thinking, oh, great, what am I getting myself into? And sure enough, she was absolutely right. At one point, one of the guys in my group was terrified of the cheeseburgers because he could see a bubble of grease forming on it. And he's like, I have suddenly lost my appetite. My best friend had it even worse because he had a really crazy diet back then. He still has a crazy diet that's even crazier than it was back then. And so they gave him hard white rice, overcooked fish, and salad that was only lettuce. They couldn't even give him dressing. So I felt so bad for him after that day. I felt so bad for me because I didn't really eat much either. But I do remember that we were like sitting on these benches under tents, and there was like a cliff to the right of us with a lot of really green trees. And I remember thinking, this is such beautiful scenery. I really like it. I think the thing that stood out to me the most about going to Steubenville was that it was a very hilly area. There were a lot of really steep slopes, and it was really hot, so I wasn't a huge fan of that. And so sometimes I would just take that time to just sit on the hills and just appreciate being outside in nature and just taking that time to pray to the Lord. And this is when my dad told me that I really screwed up. So I keep praying that maybe one of these days I'll either meet this person or heaven will allow a reunion where I can say, I'm sorry, I didn't know any better. But I was, minding my own business, sitting on the grass, and this girl came up to me. And for some reason, I still vividly remember what this girl looked like. I don't remember if she was actually black or just really dark skin, but she had really dark skin. She had like kind of pigtails that were about as short as my hair is right now. And she wore glasses. I think they were like the square shaped glasses. I remember the glasses really stood out to me. And her shirt was like greenish yellow, assuming I'm remembering that part correctly. And I just remember she was, at the time, the nicest girl I had ever met in my life. And it was still at that time where I was still kind of creeped out by girls, still kind of not. We're getting into that. I'm going to talk about it whether I want to or not. We are going to go there. And I just remember loving the fact that she came up to me and initiated a conversation. I didn't think that was something that girls liked to do unless that they were flirting back then. And I could tell that she wasn't flirting. She was legitimately interested in being my friend. And I was legitimately enjoying her company. Albeit I made two huge dunderheaded mistakes that probably sabotaged me potentially having a great friend that could have helped me out of a lot of my depression. And that's one, I said, well, I'm kind of in the process of having God time, so I'd kind of appreciate some time alone. My gosh, I can have God time anytime. I could have been like a witness to her. The second major blunder was she said, you know what? You're so easy to talk to that I would really love it if you would exchange numbers with me. And I said, I don't think my parents will allow me to give out my number to strangers, only for me to get home. And my dad said, "Aw, come on, Paul, this was a golden opportunity for you to make a new friend." And I said, well, I'm never talking to that girl again because of my stupidity, but at least I was trying to respect my parents to the best degree that I could. I'm deliberately stalling, by the way. I really want to push off this emotional moment. There was also a bookstore, and I also got to play Go Fish with some of the teenagers. I remember there was even this like kiosk where we could like use the internet, and back then it was like super rare to use the internet. I also remember in reconciliation there was a girl to my left. I don't know why that random detail stood out. And I also remember that at one point two of the teenagers, Simon and Adrian, were like taking a walk, and Simon was like tossing his water bottle up in the air, and like he kept catching it. And Adrian kept saying, you know, Simon, I really hope that your water bottle doesn't. And then at that point, Simon didn't catch the bottle, and it landed on the ground, and it just exploded all over him. And Adrian just slowly says, that happens. So poor Simon had to like hurry up and rush to the dorm so that he could change, so that it didn't look like he had peed his pants. Speaking of Simon, we had these girls, and I call them the hill girls because they seemed to love like the idea of literally looking down on us because they were on top of a hill, so they're literally looking down. There was a big sports rivalry going on at that time, and they were from Pennsylvania. And I'm not going to say where our team was from, but we weren't from Pennsylvania, I'll say that much. And they just got on top of that hill and they started smirking and they said, hey, your team is trash. And the other guys are like, nuh-uh, your team is going down in the finals. And I'm just like, I'm staying out of this because I have no interest in girls at this point. And it got to the point where it became more of a friendly rivalry. To the point where they eventually, thank goodness I wasn't here for that after what I heard, but they wanted to get a picture with that group of guys. And so, again, Simon is roped into this for some reason. And right when they're about to take the picture, the girls kiss Simon on the cheeks. And mind you, Simon was already in a relationship at the time, just his girlfriend happened to not go on the trip, and he just, from what my brother told me, he looked mortified. And my brother was also dating someone at the time, and she wasn't at the conference, so he was like, thank you, God, for them not kissing me and kissing Simon instead. So those girls, actually, one thing that really impressed me about them is they seemed like the types that just really liked being around people, and they didn't particularly care how much they talked to them. As long as they were in their company, that was good enough for them. Because at the end of the conference, they came up to our group, and I think for some reason the guys were like sitting separately from the girls. I don't really remember what was going on there. And they said, we just want to give all of you a hug. And they even hugged me and my best friend, and we had like hardly talked to any girls the whole conference. But we talked to enough girls where that totally ruined it for me. Oh, wait, let me tell you another memory to put this off. Eucharistic adoration was one of the most mind-blowing experiences I had ever had up to that point. I think the only thing that's even come close is on my 2018 mission trip when I had the miraculous healing. But I remember they dimmed all of the lights and they had incense, and the priest was like walking through the room kind of just holding the monstrance in front of the teenagers. And they had warned us about this ahead of time, so it's not like this was a big shock for me. But they had said, like, when people are in the true presence of Christ, a lot of strange things can happen. Like, people will start laughing, people will start crying, people will start falling over. All of that happened. I did watch a girl just a few rows ahead of me faint, and the attendants had to, make sure she was okay. I didn't exactly faint, but I did feel this incredible sensation of you are loved and you are precious, because I was just so tired of kneeling, because my gosh, that place did not know how to respect our knees, because during Mass, everyone knelt. Now, of course, recently I found out that if conditions don't apply, you don't have to kneel. If, like, for example, the chairs are too close or you have a medical condition that makes it hard to kneel. But I didn't know that at the time. And so my big lanky legs are like struggling to fit under the chairs, and Simon over there is real short, and so he has no problem with it. And I just remember thinking, oh, I'm so looking forward to this, but my knees so aren't. And then at the moment that the priest stood in front of me with the Blessed Sacrament, at that point, just this overwhelming feeling of being loved and appreciated came to me. And eventually they said, like, if anyone feels like they've been called by Christ, come to the altar. I know you usually hear that in Protestant services, but to hear it at a Catholic conference was so cool. And of course, I got to the stage and I'm like holding out my hand, and I don't think I said this out loud, but I said in my head, Lord, at this point, I am going to be enthusiastic about my faith, and I'm going to talk about it to as many people as possible, and I'm going to really just not be afraid of sharing my faith. And I started crying. Of course, back then, I think it was because I was so much in depression that I cried all the time. Nowadays, I hardly ever cry, but back then I did. And this boy just somehow, amidst tons and tons of people being packed together, saw that I was crying, came and gave me a hug, and then just disappeared. No, I don't mean like he literally just poof and disappeared. I mean like after he gave me the hug, he kind of just seemed to blend back into the crowd. I'd like to think maybe he was an angel. I obviously have no way of verifying that, but that would be really cool if just like an angel pretended to be a teenage boy at that point. That would have been so amazing. Okay, I've put it off long enough. Why was this one of the worst experiences of my life? It's because I had been slowly getting braver and braver at my youth group to realize that I could talk to some of the girls. I just wouldn't go out of my way to talk to crowds of them or be like romantically interested. So there were a couple of girls at the youth group that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to see the good side of them and like not be squeamish and give them hugs and maybe even want to hang out with them. And so this one particular girl, we had talked about the possibility of doing a hangout because she really liked Dance Dance Revolution. I really liked Dance Dance Revolution, and I said, oh yeah, I'd love to play with you. And so I was really excited to hear that she was going on this conference with me, but she must have been going through a really hard time at that time because something in her just snapped during this conference. Maybe it was because I disrespected her at the youth group. I have no idea. But like every time I tried to ask her to hang out and talk, she would always say no. Or she would like give me this awkward, like, shut up right now, Paul, type of smile to like try to hint at me that she didn't want to talk. But me being dumb and oblivious and Still to this day, I'm not very good at reading those kinds of cues. I didn't realize that, and I just kept thinking, yeah, maybe she was in a bad mood. Maybe she just didn't like me. Because I thought, oh, for sure, if I tell her that I want to be a priest, she's going to be so happy about that. But she was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And it was like this ridiculously forced, ridiculously polite response. And I feel like I was kind of duped. Because after that conference, I was told that I messed up so badly with that girl in asking her to hang out that my youth group decided that they didn't want me to go on the camping trip, which I was so excited for. And they said, yeah, no, you royally screwed up at that conference. Despite that I was trying as hard as I could to be respectful and a gentleman and not be rude, only to have them tell me that. And not only that, but get the facts wrong. Like, apparently they said that I tried to talk to her 10 different times, and at most it was more like 3 or 4. And that she was apparently crying to them because she really didn't want me to talk to her. Like, are you not supposed to talk to people at a conference? And so that was the moment where I think my former sexism really started coming into play. Now, there was, to be fair, there was one girl in my group that had always been on my side and had never given me troubles. And to this day, we still don't really, we don't really talk anymore. But I'm sure if we did, it would be like supernatural and nice. And if she ever saw me again, she'd probably give me a hug. But she noticed that as I was walking, I was crying because I sort of got this sixth sense that the youth group leaders were already conspiring to kick me out of the camping trip. And she said, oh my gosh, Paul, is something the matter? And mind you, this was the same girl that was talking with Simon with the water bottle instance. So this showed a really golden side to her. And I just said, and I remember my exact words. I said, you can kiss that camping trip goodbye for me. And at that point, I only can imagine, based on the conversations we had at other youth group events, that this was as devastating to her as it was to me, because she had been really hoping that I could come on the camping trip because she had been to it before. And I was like psyching myself up, like, okay, Adrian, what should I expect? And she's going on and on about how great it is. And she said, oh, do you need a hug, Paul? And I said, yeah, I do. And she said, here, you come and hang out with us and we'll make you feel better. And she was like the one bright spot among so many negative interactions that I had with females. And at that point, something in me just exploded and this wave of hatred oozed out of me where I said, that double crosser, why would just talking to you make you hate me so much that you would kick me out of this conference? And of course, in retrospect, it was maybe 3 girls at that whole youth group that had really treated me with disrespect. But, I had been literally abused, and I wish I was making that up, but according to my therapist, according to a Catholic priest, and according to several sources I've talked to, there was physical and emotional abuse, possibly verbal, but my memories are a bit hazy on that one. And all of them had been done at the hands of women and girls taking advantage of me, including one of my relatives. And so I guess like at that point, I kind of just gave up. And that's why it took so long for me to go on the mission trip. Because my plan that year was that I was going to go to Steubenville and the mission trip. And so after Steubenville, I was just so broken and so done with females that I went to my youth group leader and I just said, all that money that I poured into the mission trip, take it. I'm not going. And of course, she was devastated too. She's like, why? You were so excited for the mission trip. And I said, not after Steubenville. I do not want to risk another girl hating my guts for reasons that she didn't tell me. And my friend Rachel was so desperate for me to go on mission trip that every single time we had a youth group event, Rachel would always come up to me and she'd say, Paul, I really want you to reconsider going on the mission trip. And I would keep saying, Rachel, you do realize how terrifying that would be. And every single time Rachel would persist and talk about the good stuff that I could look forward to. And of course, as you all know from watching my YouTube channel, she succeeded. And while at first it was very scary, eventually Monica and Reba showed up, and then the 12 girls at Four Corners showed up and got me to completely change my mind. And and then I not only stopped hating girls, but now I'm like hopelessly heterosexual and really enjoy being in their presence. Assuming they're the decent type, I don't think I'd want to hang around someone who's like into hooking up and sex and drugs and all that, but being around decent girls is really great. So, the moral of the story, I guess, is don't judge an entire group of people based on a handful of instances where you had negative experiences. That's called prejudice, and we don't want that to happen. Instead, think about the circumstances of when it happened and why it happened. Obviously, in the case of, say, abuse, there are warning signs that you can look for if you study up on them. In the case of, say, mature versus immature teenage girls, I guess it's hard to say now because I'm so far removed from being a teenager, but I guess like her language choices are probably a big factor. Does she talk with kindness and compassion, or does she look like she's like wanting to get away from you? Like, look for those kinds of body languages that I'm still not that great at detecting. Like, my gosh, being at the gym and trying to figure out when a girl wants me to say hi to her or not is a really hard task. I think asking questions definitely really helped. Like asking, like, oh, I'm sorry, did I bother you? Hello, are you okay? Like, putting a question mark before talking to a girl seems to be the best thing. So, this was stupidly long, but I hope it managed to teach you a lesson about how you can recover from being in the absolute slums of sin and hatred and prejudice and come back around and be a totally different person and make so much amends that, again, if you watch my mission trip video, you can get to the point where there's girls swarming around you, all of them saying you are amazing and you were the highlight of my trip. And even now, I still have people like that in my life that affirm me and say that I'm doing a good job. So I know this was stupidly long, but I really wanted to make an impact. So I hope that it worked. And before I end, I would like to give a shout out to my patrons, Matthew Rakowski, Spoon Ghost, and Splatcat for supporting me financially. My Patreon link will be in the description if you would like to join. And in the meantime, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!